Hey guys, this is Emily, and you are just about to watch Project Kids number 11 with myself and Michael Wan. And this was sort of an impromptu, different kind of show. We had decided to get together to catch up because we hadn't spoken in a couple of weeks, and we were maybe even going to play with some like live streaming research or whatnot. But what we ended up doing was really sort of nothing that we had planned to talk about. And instead, we dove into a number of topics, including where we're going to be possibly going with some of this Project Kids idea going forward. And so this was recorded straight through. I didn't do the usual taking a break to split the public hour and the private hour. So there's none of that commentary about that in the video. When the video splits, if you would like to watch the rest, there's another about hour and a half that came after this video ends on YouTube. Please go to patreon.com/offplanetmedia and you can watch the rest. And we got into some very interesting coordination, shall I say, in the second segment. And that's all. Okay, have a great day. Enjoy the show.
They're like, well, hey, what do you think about this? And he was like, oh, definitely. That's titanium.
Resource.org. Resonance. Resonance. I'm sorry.
Resonance with a hyphen between the human and resonance.
By the way, I hit record because I'm sure this is going to be
perfect. That's it. Exactly. Right. So what he said to me, so I was like, I sent him some pictures, like, definitely that's Atlantean titanium geopolymer, blah, 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 based upon whatever. And I asked him, I was like, well, what should I do? Like, can I do a test or anything like that? He's like, testing's too expensive. But what you might want to do is bring a magnet and see what happens. And I think what he was implying was that I should see some type of magnetism in terms of like, it should stick. Like I have these two stones. I didn't have to go to the place. These stones are made of that. And the magnet there, it didn't stick. So there's no like iron. I'm pretty certain that's what would make when you've got iron in a stone and there's going to be some magnetism, it's going to stick. And I've got like lodestone, which does that. But with these stones, and this is what was weird, and you can't really like demonstrate it unless it's in your hand. Do you know when you take two magnets and you put them next to each other, you could feel that happened. So there's no magnetism in the fact, like nothing sticks to these, but when I put a magnet to it, you could feel this magnetic, you could feel the field. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. So that's the first bag.
So I was weird. I kept trying to pull that website up here so people could see it, but my computer won't take, Laura's computer will take it. Mine keeps changing one of the letters to a number. It was weird. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, that is weird.
What we're talking about here, just so you guys know, is he was talking about Alex Putney's website and his work, which was human-resonance.org. Yeah, that's what he was talking about.
The guy is fascinating. I mean, I've got a couple of his books. Gets really, it's very scientific. So if you like that sort of stuff, like I love the idea, but it was a little bit over my head or like too much the detail in the science to really hold my attention. But whenever like it makes reference, and this is what, God, I got to send this to you. The book I do have by him, it's called Phi, Phi, and he shows, he overlaps utilizing the golden ratio on the earth and all of these sort of like locations, and he points out like I think like volcanoes or something like that. But what's so interesting, and I remember when you first started like introducing me to the concept of the your shape, the quatrefoil.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah.
He shows the quatrefoil over and over again as showing itself as this way to map like different spots on Earth.
Yep.
I thought, and I wonder, I'll still send that to you, the stuff I have, but I thought that was interesting. Okay. So back to the bags. This here is the first felt bag. I got this real heavy duty felt.
Oh, it's
handsome. I did like
it's purple. Look.
Yeah, it's I did pink and purple and gray because they look good together. And the light blue, you could see that. And in here I got some good stones in here. I've got like this is serpentine I found. This is local serpentine.
It's making me vibrate. When you pulled it out of the bag, that stone's making me vibrate.
Yeah, and then this is anthracite, real thin. And I love the black and the green. Like I'm a sucker for colors, and colors are vibration. So it's like, I pick up a lot of things visually. I mean, that's one of the things.
That anthracite is cool. It reminds me of this stone that I have that my dad brought me from Namibia. The one I have is different colors, but it has some of the same kind of unusual. It's like disc, but it's got like steps and layers and levels to it. Yeah.
And this is so light. The anthracite is not like a dense stone, so it feels like it's an interesting weight in the hand versus like these, which are amazingly dense.
Yeah.
All right. So then I made this. A friend of mine had me make a bag for like oracle cards.
Yeah.
So, he's given it as a gift. And so this is, never have I done like fabric before. I've got like leather on the bottom.
Yeah.
This is all felt. And then I got this really nice drawstring with this like a lock right there. And you could take the cards out. So this bag was kind of nice.
Well, that's cool.
And then this is the one I'm most excited about. So Paul, and Paul, he sent me a whole bunch of
Paul came back, by the way.
He's coming back. So he sent me a whole bunch of stones, but he sent the stones in these US Mint bags. He collects coins.
Yeah.
So he's got all of these bags, which are, for, I guess, which the US Mint would use, and they would put in like
little canvas sacks. Yeah. Like little.
Yes, the canvas sacks.
I have them. Yeah.
And so I did one, and I used a canvas sack for the Susquehanna mystery map, but I turned another one into a drawstring bag. And so that's what I'm most excited about. This one right here.
Yeah.
And I added that. And I put these, this right here, because it's this real heavy duty canvas, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then it's not drawstring. So I added the drawstring, and if you could see like the color and like the detail, I don't know. I think that's awesome. So he's going to send me a whole bunch more. So maybe I'll make one of these and send them out to you guys, because these bags are really, really durable, and they're cool, and they're interesting. You can put all sorts of stuff
cool. There's something special about something that comes in a little drawstring canvas bag like that. There, two of my favorite restaurants here in Los Angeles, like one is called Redbird, and it's actually an old Catholic monastery. It's really old Catholic sort of church monastery thing. It's a beautiful restaurant, but they have these little rolls that they bring to the table. And when they bring them in a little canvas bag so they stay warm. And they're these like really delicious, dense, chewy little rolls. They're very good. And then there's a Mexican restaurant called Maestro in Pasadena. And they have really amazing homemade corn tortillas. And they make them kind of small, but they also deliver them in the little canvas bag to the table to keep them warm. And you can open it and pull it out. And you know what I mean?
They're suckers for bags. It's part of the human experience.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, I just pushed record because we were just having our general pre-recording chat, and he started talking about interesting stuff. So I guess I was going to have like a little meeting with you before we started the recording, so I could push pause and we could have a little meeting, or we could just have it on air.
I say let's have it on air. I think that's part of like what I was hoping we could explore with this is more of like a normal spontaneous conversation with research.
Perfect. This is my thoughts. So I feel like I think we're really, really on to something with what we're doing, especially like I was traveling while it happened, so I haven't had a chance to share it with you, but we got enormous response from our last show. Like I have at least 10 or 12 emails of people who like that. Someone who I've never heard of before, not our usual patrons or people or whatever, who were like, I like your guys' stuff for a while, but this one pushed me over. I had to reach out. So I will forward those to you because some of them are very good.
I don't even remember what we talked about. That seems like a whole nother world. Like, so I'm fascinated to hear what that is.
Yeah. So like, it's hard for me. Once I do a show, I kind of forget.
It goes away. It goes away.
I mean, like for the first year or so I was doing shows, I remembered every word I said and all that kind of stuff. And at a certain point, like you can't keep track of where you said what anymore and whatever. Right. So like, so I think we're really onto something. And I also feel like there's something we can do to like sort of streamline this in a way that like it has the greater effect that we're sort of looking for, right? And I was trying to think about what that was. And so these are sort of some of my ideas, okay? So I think that like the regular kind of Project Kids show that we've been doing, where it's just the 2 hours, you and I think we should still do like one of those a month where it's kind of like we can take some of the topics that have been like the most interesting or easy to connect for people who aren't into the super deep levels yet. They can see sort of what we're doing, right? Like, and make like a nice narrative that's sort of easy to follow, right? And that will be like a regular show, like what we've been doing. But then everything else moved to what you and I have talked about, which we're not doing today because live streaming is a little more complicated and I've not done it before. So when I started to look into it, I realized I have a few more days of work to do on it before I know what I'm doing. Because with the combination of like Zoom and either YouTube, or there's a couple things that have to get going. But everything else we do is this sort of more like laid back conversational and research while we do it live streams that you and I have talked about doing a couple times a week, right? Everything else is that. And then there's one like slightly more produced show, like a month that we'll do it in the same style we've been doing it. And then as far as like the group, rather than doing this like attempt at a formal one time a month sort of workshop or webinar, because while I think there's been some really interesting moments and exchanges in there, it hasn't quite struck the thing that I'm exactly sort of going for with this. I feel like, right? And I feel like part of it is because the people in the group haven't really gotten to know each other in the same way you and I have gotten to know each other. I know for sure that once they do, like Marcy and Laura have been going back and forth and they're starting to develop a kind of rapport because they've done it a lot. So rather than doing this like once a month workshop thing, and we have one this weekend, I think we'll do it. Maybe we'll talk about this with the people there. I think what I would like to do is start like a little Project Kids online sort of like cafe or online coffee shop where once or twice a week, I'll just open the Zoom room and people who are part of Project Kids can come and hang out and chat with each other and start developing their own resonance. And I think I can even do a thing where there's like breakaway groups. So if two people want to go off and have their private conversation, they can do that, right? If they want to explore something on their own before they bring it to the group or whatever, but where it's more relaxed and everybody can come chat, get to know each other. I think the reason you and I have the rapport we do is because we talk several times a week, even if it's just for a few minutes. And sometimes it's casual about more personal stuff. And other times we're talking about deep research and then we do our shows. So when we open this little Zoom room cafe kind of thing, it wouldn't be, I'm not coming with a topic or a big purpose to it. It's that everybody can hang out and see what happens. Because I think part of what is like why think tanks and intelligence agencies work is they put people together in the group and then they just sit there all day and see what happens for a while. And then something formulates and then they know where to go, right? Kind of thing. And I think just having some hangout time together that isn't like trying to put a structure onto it, like allows something to sort of take shape naturally the way your and my sort of mirroring and resonance and all that stuff did. And also like a lot of the interactions that people send me in emails and stuff, it will be I think there'd be more like spontaneity to it if I can give them an immediate response based on what they're saying and we can converse about it instead of taking 2 weeks in back and forth emails to get to the same point we can get to in a 20-minute conversation online, right? So, and I think that will also, if like we open the Zoom room up for like 2 hours, maybe like twice a week, like we don't even each necessarily have to be there at all times. It's like whoever shows up can have their kind of chat and I can kind of monitor it or whatever. Some days you may be able to come, some days not. We can do them at different times too. So people who can't just come if it's one time a month, like some people, I'll make them different times every time. So people who couldn't come when it was in the evening can come if it's in the morning or whatever, and just have, like this space that is just for people who are kind of interested in this stuff and finding these conversations and resonances, and people can go off on their own little rabbit holes of research while we're doing that, just like you would be in a coffee shop, right? Two people talking about this, two people talking about this kind of thing. I think that might be a really interesting way.
Yeah.
Do you like this?
Well, you had, when you use the analogy or the comparison to like think tanks, and how they're structured, I don't know so much about like, think tanks, but I'm thinking of, but I'm certain they're probably all done the same way. It's called IAS. I think it's like the maybe International Advanced School. Is that what it's called? Let me go check. But it's this thing in Princeton, which they started doing this like probably in the 40s, where they would take all of these like experts in different, very, very different fields, and they would put them together, and they'd be like, we'll give you like an office, we'll give you a place to stay. You don't have to worry about nothing,
Right.
But you'd like come and you do whatever it is. And like you mingle, you have coffee with people you normally would never have interaction with. And then we're going to see what comes up.
That's
And
exactly it.
this is like, they did this with like Einstein and like von Neumann, like all of like these big, like the people who built the computer system and all these ideas, which is our modern reality. Like, I'm not necessarily saying like that was a good thing, but I am saying it was an effective thing.
Yeah.
What they were doing. And so like a lot of what I think we're playing with is like, this so much of the weaponization of what's happened, like our natural abilities as humans being weaponized and used against us. We could just like kind of like the beginning of what you said, like that Pong machine, we'll just go and reflect it back in like, oh, that seemed to work. So let's go do that here. And I love that idea. I love that, like bringing people in, different ideas, and then just kind of running with it and seeing what comes up, and the structure being loose with the actual details, but being tight with the expectation that there's going to be things that we can't anticipate are going to come out of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. And so I think that's largely how like think tanks work. I think a lot of think tanks have people who are like permanently part of them, like experts, and then they invite people to come for like a year or a season, as they call them, like, I forget the name of it, but like they come and for a year they're there and they just have access to all these research materials that are there and these experts on things. And it's like to see what they do. Right. But they're hanging around with people that they wouldn't normally hang out with, and kind of thing. And if you also think about all the interesting like social or counterculture movements, whatever we think of them, whether we think that any of them are organic or whether they're designed and controlled, we know what our intention here is to, we know that we're not doing intelligence agents, the bad kind of intelligence agency crap. Oftentimes what they did is there would have been like a coffee shop or a bar or a community center where people who were in that area who were interested in things like art and culture and music and esoteric aspects of science would come and hang out almost on a daily or weekly basis, and really interesting movements sort of grew out of that. I mean, the same thing could be said for like the rave scene. Like in some cities, there were like places where like like there was this one warehouse, and somebody had bought the warehouse or rented the warehouse for a year, and every weekend there was some kind of thing going on there, and there was like a crew of people that were always there, and interesting things started to form out of that, right? And sometimes people broke off and did their own things, but it's kind of like a place where you can come and concentrate your energy or concentrate your sort of thoughts and whatever, and like put them together and see what sort of forms out of it. So that was kind of my thought. Like I got the hit on that while I was exercising the other day, which is where I sort of get my best ideas.
Right.
And I feel like, and I just also like the idea of like, when you have and I know you're a huge fan of coffee shops, as am I. It's one of the things I miss most about the situation we're in right now is there's none of that stuff going on. But like, if you have a good coffee shop in your neighborhood, you can pop in there any time of day and either find something interesting to read that somebody left behind, or someone interesting to talk to who's either there regularly or just stopping through on their way to somewhere else. And you have some of the most interesting little interactions and observations that you're going to have. Same with bars. I love going and sitting at a bar by myself and seeing what happens, seeing who talks to me, seeing what I observe. I love that stuff, right? So
I don't know if we could do this, but this just popped in my head. What if, and this is gonna be funny. What if we were like able to keep like the room open all the time?
Okay.
And so like, let's say you're going to go and do like just normal research on your computer, what have you, or me, like whether or not we have something scheduled. And we also have like, we're also in that room. And so it creates just like what you're saying, like a coffee shop. And if someone else is like, hey, well, who knows what we're doing, they could poke their head in there also like, hey, what's going on? Nothing, just working on this. But, what will, if it was even looser than that, and if it was like the coffee shop, and like whenever you're kind of like, if you're on here and like we're dealing with like privacy stuff and all that sort of stuff, so you got to be like aware of what you're doing, or like what you're opening yourself up to. But you know, the very nature that we're on the computer box are already wide open to begin with. But again, we're like, well, all right, well, let's go and use this as a place where people come and where they can go and meet, and I'd be curious to see if that could gather some like traction. And you know, I know that I spend like time doing research, and I wouldn't mind having it open if I wasn't doing anything other than research, and have someone poke their head in like, hey, what are you doing? And like, oh, I'm looking at this, and seeing what comes up. I'd be down to that. I don't know if we could do that, but that sounds interesting to me.
So I think what we could do is, I don't think we want to have it open all the time, because I think then, but I think we could say from this hour to this hour, every day, the space is open, right?
Okay.
So going to the library or the coffee shop, right? From this hour to this hour. And then maybe like each week or each day or something, like each week, we can say like, I will definitely, you and I, because everyone else is, you know, right? You and I are kind of getting this going, and it can become different later, but I will be here from 10 to, for sure, from this time to this time on this day, this time to this time. So if somebody wants to show up and chat with me about something or research something with me, they can make sure that they're there.
Wow. Wow.
Right?
I like this. I like this a lot. Is there like, I don't know. Like, I can't stand any of like the productivity shit on the website, on the computer, because this is my opinion. When you start tying in like your productivity, your schedule, all of that stuff in the computer, like that's who and what you live your life. And you know, that's just me with my hangups with technology. But nonetheless, if I wouldn't mind like putting my hours, like what you're saying, like on like some place where you can see the hours, and maybe if people start coming along and they can do that also. Like, I'm not necessarily doing anything other than the fact that I will be open. I will have, what do you call it? Like, you know, I'll be in the, do we call it the coffee shop? I'll be in the coffee shop doing other stuff on the computer, but yeah. I'll be there. And like, it could be like paying your bills or like something else, but that will be open. And that would be open to all sorts of different conversations, because I know we like to talk about other things, like just like in a coffee shop, like maybe someone to hit you up about like nutrition, or they could hit me up about some other stuff, or we could talk like, what are you researching? That, I think that could be really beneficial to all sorts of people.
Yeah, no, I think it could be cool. And I think we could definitely, the shop is open these hours, and then we can kind of say, I'll be here from this time to this time. Like there's times when we're there to like interact first, like that's the point, is to interact or to whatever. And there's other times where we could just be there sort of doing our other stuff. And if other people are talking and something pops up and we want to join the conversation or whatever, right? Like, so we can kind of, I think we're gonna have to experiment a little bit and see how the flow goes. But right. I think, you know, access to the coffee shop could be to the Project Kids members, right? And then like if, and then that gets them access to this whole thing. And I think maybe one of the things we could sort of allow in order to try and expand it is that like, the people who are members, like, one time a month or something like that, they can invite someone who's not a member to come sit in for one of the sessions.
Yeah.
They like it.
Then, like, it's like, like it's kind of like a private club sort of thing. And we go in and like, you don't have to, you just poke your head in. So here's a question I have. Is Zoom the best platform?
So the only reason it's the best platform is it's because the one that I've used and I understand kind of the ins and outs of it. And I, to this point, have not had any problems with it. I've not lost a recording, right? So not everything's going to be recorded, but I've not lost a recording. I've never been like bounced off and not able to get back and like had abandoned my show or my group or whatever because of the problem. I've never I don't have reception problems on it like with some of the other things. I don't have the problems that I witness other content creators sometimes having with whatever software that they're using.
Right.
But I also know that this, I have access to one that is like the more professional account that allows up to 50 people to be there, like at a time. Like the regular Zoom account isn't quite so broad, but I have access to one that will allow us to have a fairly large number of people in there at a time if we wanted to. And I think it allows for this thing that is actually cool, which is this break-off groups, right? Where if like two people were like down a rabbit hole and they want to go, but not have to hear the noise of the rest of the conversation or whatever, they can go. I can make them a breakout group. They can go, and then they can, after they've sorted out what they're sorting out, they can come back and tell us about it or whatever, right? Like there's some cool features to it. I just don't know enough about I'm open to other things, but like I'm not, I wouldn't say that I'm not tech inclined because I don't tend to have struggles with technology. It's just not my natural tendency to want to sit at the computer and play with and figure all these things out.
Yeah.
Usually, like, if somebody shows me something, I remember how to do it, and then from there I don't have problems. But like even like right now, like okay, I'm having to figure out the live streaming thing, which I could just theoretically go to YouTube and push go live, but I want to use, I need to use Zoom in order to be for us to be able to talk to each other. So then I have to figure out how to run YouTube live through Zoom so that we still have the conference room for when you and I want to do our live. So like sometimes it takes me a little while to figure something out.
Yeah.
And once I figure it out, like I'm not the person that has like technical problems all the time or anything. And Zoom, I feel like I know pretty well. I've used it for a variety of different kinds of projects, both recorded and not recorded, and it seems to be okay. So I'm open to suggestions from other people, right? Especially if there's someone out there who's really good at like coordinating these kinds of online meetings and productions and stuff like that. But I, like sometimes I feel like when you're starting something new, like start with what you know, and then if something else grows out of it that seems like the more obvious answer, we can make that migration. But I feel like just in order to like get the sort of flow and idea we want going, it's probably best to work with something that we really understand.
Yeah, and my concern isn't so much of it as like like for the technology platform, because like Zoom works, right? You know, mine is more so like, why the fuck is Zoom free? Why the fuck is everyone like, it's more of that sort of like I don't like it's the same reason I don't use Facebook for a variety of reasons, and part of it is like is like I don't trust it, and I don't want to mingle with it, and I have that same sort of thing with Zoom. But and it's not, and I don't want to come across as being like really paranoid, but at the same time I'm like, I don't know what Zoom is. Like I'll
tell you what Zoom is. You want me to tell you, and it'll just make it more interesting.
All right.
Zoom is a mind control project. Right? Like, and so for me, and my whole thing is like, if I know what something is, like, right, so there's two things. Like, obviously, like Zoom seems to be some sort of Chinese technology that got revealed during the beginning of this coronavirus thing, right?
Right.
Now, I have a Mac, and we're running it through my Mac, and Mac seems to have a better handle on the security issues. That I haven't had any of these weird interruptions or bizarre stuff happen. Like, I know that they did a fix on some of the stuff in the beginning to stop whatever that back door was. That's what they say. I don't trust Apple either. But we were jokingly like, so Laura remembered that, and we were going to make a show on this. We just haven't had time. She remembered that when she was little, there was a TV show called Zoom. All right. It was on like the public broadcast network. And it was about bringing together children of like multicultural diversity kinds of things and allowing them to sort of see what happens when they interact with song and dance and this and all this other stuff. Right. I took one look at the logo for Zoom, and I was like, that is a mind control, like not the Zoom technology, the Zoom show, right? It's brightly colored orange and pink and purple thing and whatever. And that's exactly the kind of things that they like tempted me and seduced me with when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
And this Zoom program had a rotating cast of characters. So it wasn't like the same cast all the time. Just like Zoom meetings have a rotating cast. Like literally, this Zoom technology is like the reality TV version of the Zoom television show that was available in the 70s. And if you even, it came out of the Boston area, which is where all those sort of universities are that do all the fucking mind control and shit on the East Coast, right? But if you look into some of the characters, like this was actually part of the birth of like the SJW, right, kind of culture. It's very interesting. And I intuitively know and understand that this is part of it, right? So I think that like doing it here is, it just makes it more interesting. It's like,
okay. So then that attitude lets me, my internal like hesitation, like breathe, like relax. And particularly as we as like full transparency. That's really important. Not just like transparency with other people, but transparency with myself. Like,
Yep.
so, side conversation, like, you know, compartmentalizing your brain is a very, very powerful skill everyone should learn how to do, but it's been weaponized in, like, you know, all of the programs. And so, like, you know, transparency within your own self is like, so like you're able to go from one compartmentalized part of your head to another. If we can approach working on Zoom knowing like, yeah, this is it, and we're gonna, like, we ain't got nothing to hide, you know, and we're gonna discuss what it is, like, you know, it's this, like, we're feedback looping into the thing which was like meant to seduce us, like, and that feels much more like not only transparent but empowering versus, like, I know there's, and I've thought about doing this with some of my one-on-one stuff, there's like a open source program, I think it's like JITSU, like it's the same idea, it's free, it's not quite as easy as Zoom, but I was like, oh, that way you're not on the system. I'm like, well, fuck it, we're on the internet is the system, so it's like, let's just go. If we even call it like the mind control coffee shop or whatever, like some sort of play upon that, it's like, yeah, this is it, we understand. You know what this reminds me of? This is so funny. Have you ever spent time in Godlike Productions? Do you know that website?
So I used to, until they started requiring you to like agree to something to go onto their stuff. Right. So
and that horrible, and it was horrible, right? It was out of like the Isle of Jersey, like it was the strangest thing. So I think everyone who is part of like Godlike Productions from the early stages, I was, obviously you were, I haven't been there for a long time, but that was where I did the majority of my research began at Godlike Productions. And everyone knew that it was mind control. Everyone knew it was government. Everyone knew, like, half the people you're interacting with, they're like, you know, they're professional intelligence trolls. Maybe your handlers there, who knows? But like, you knew what you were working with, and they referred to it, I love this, like in their byline of what it was, it described it as the lunatic fringe.
Yeah.
And there was something really, really empowering to me about, like, yeah, like and so it feels like, you know, this is like the lunatic fringe, like coffee shop, and like, yeah, what else do you think Zoom is? What else do you think Zoom is? You know, right. And like we're going to come and like, all right, let's go, and we're going to dissect it. And maybe that's even part of the whole thing. And there's like we're making fun of it, because that's the whole thing, is like, it's the humor. We talked about this in the beginning. You have to, if you don't have a sense of humor, and that was the first thing that like fell in all of the, like, you know, communist regimes, is humor went away. You know, you talked about the SJW movement. The top thing you could say about that is there's no sense of humor.
Yeah.
And so I want to bring a humor about the fact of like what we're doing and where we're doing it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the whole, I mean, I think that's in some ways the essence of everything we're doing. When we named it Project Kids, we were mimicking back to the system, like, oh, you
want
a project too, right? So I think, you know, the other thing is in order to have the number of people you want to have, like, that account is a paid account. So like, right, like it does have some more securities involved in it, but I don't think there's any such thing. I think there's no such thing as privacy anymore, right? Like, and I don't know that there ever was, right? Because depending on what you think this thing we live in is, like, I think that every time we breathe out, we are giving the universal system, it's like a, you know, like a large intelligence organism, information about ourselves, right? It takes that in, it sends information back, we breathe it in. Like, I don't think privacy exists in the way that people were led to believe that it exists, right? Like, I think privacy might exist from like one another, like there's things about myself you don't know and vice versa. But in terms of privacy, where like no one knows, and I think the watcher, or whatever it is that knows everything, is really like our most godlike self, our highest self, like, right, the one that is outside of time.
You know what? Okay, do you ever see the movie Southland Tales?
No.
Southland Tales was, I can't remember the name of the director who did Donnie Darko.
Oh yeah, I don't know the name of the director either, but
so
like,
this was his follow-up.
Yeah.
This was his follow-up, and I believe it was like a box office disaster. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I remember when I was watching it like a few years ago, there was something about it which I loved. I think, you should see it. And the cast is very, very funny. And the movie is fantastic. And maybe we should talk about that. But there's a part of the movie, and it deals with like the end of the world. And it takes place in LA. Is LA also known as Southland? Or is there a part of LA known as Southland?
There's part of LA known as like the South Bay or whatever. But
well, I'm pretty certain like that, like the whole thing takes place. I think you might like it for that reason. Like I got the impression that it was like an LA insiders film. Like you know how like there's a lot of Hollywood films which are like insider films. Like if you're in the industry, like there are a lot of. I got the impression that the movie was kind of like that, just in terms of all the different places. So I think that in itself might be interesting to you. But the point of it, and it dealt with like like different versions of oneself in reality. And one of the subplot devices are these two different parts of you if they ever see each other or meet up in reality. So there's like another Emily or there's another Mike.
And there is.
Everything collapses. Like the entire system collapses. The entire system is built upon, and when I say the system, like the system of reality, you got to see this movie. I'm going to watch it again and we're going to discuss it. But it deals with when the two versions of you meet, the entire world collapses on itself. And we're playing with that by saying like, okay, we're going into Zoom, the mind control mechanism, to discuss like mind control and to point out how it works. And so like, there's this like coming in together, which is going to lead to like, a collapse of the system. Like maybe not a literal collapse, but we're playing with that type of idea. And to me, that would be like a really fun way, like how we said this in the beginning, like, of these think tanks or the I'll send you some information on I'll pull it up in a little bit of the whatever IAS. I can't remember what it stood for.
Yeah.
We know that we're bringing in this like we're trying to go and decipher the control system, the intelligence system, using the intelligence systems like tool. And so like, and that's it. We don't know what's going to happen of it, but this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is like over the time that you and I have communicated, and a lot of our communication has either been over their technology via the cell phone, all of it, because we've never met each other in person, at least not in this iteration of ourselves. Right. So we've talked on the phone and we've used this, but it hasn't stopped a certain level of telepathy from developing between you and I, to where we can get together after not talking for a few days or a few weeks, and I can say this happened and oh my God, it was the exact same thing happened to you, or we had like synchronized things going on. Whether that's a controlled synthetic telepathy or a natural one, it's still a fun thing to sort of play with. So, right, like just like we're going to have our communications here with the group, and hopefully that will lead to other forms of communication, whether that be getting together in person or phone talking or emailing for people, or beginning to experience telepathy or energetic trade, or like we had with our flower kind of thing and whatnot, right? And so it's just, this is a platform, right? And think about it. Zoom really blew up, right, during coronavirus. Like suddenly people who didn't know what Zoom are experts at using Zoom. But think about who the people who were using Zoom first were. They were people like us for our shows and whatever. We're the fucking project kids from Project Zoom. Yeah. Like if you and I were like teenagers in the 70s, we probably would have been on the Zoom television show. We probably would have been the people who were on it and whatnot, right? So it's like we sort of test, just like MK Ultra is a direct application of intense mind control for a particular reason on a certain group of people for a certain means. Then when that technology or that technique is perfected, it's done to the masses through propaganda or media or whatever, but it's the same sort of technique and purpose. So now Zoom has gone public. It's no longer like a, intelligence or sort of undercover operation. It's mainstream, right? They've perfected that mind control and they put it mainstream, right? And so it's kind of interesting the way this is developed during this time. So yeah, I like all these levels that you're talking about.
I think we're on, and so how we do it, how you have access to this club, is your patron.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so, because I think what we were, where I at least felt like tripped up, where I felt tripped up is like, we're all coming up with new ways of like, as long as we got paid bills and not get sucked into like the other systems which are being created, is like, how can we charge for content, or how can we this be like an exchange that way? And we're like coming up with all of these different things, and like, it was too hard. Like it shouldn't, like, it shouldn't be hard. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're trying to make it hard to suck it all out. But if we can go and make it easy, and this feels easy, this feels like it gives a real value. Like, people get to come in and we get to have these interactions, and like we meet and we like, there's no, when we do our shows, like there's a degree of performance, right? Like if you're going to be a host, if you're going to be on the show, like you have to bring like I would say like 80%, 85% is authentic, but it's like 15% of it is performance.
Right.
It's like, you know what, like we got this scheduled, I'm tired, I don't want to do this, but it's like, I'm going to go and push this aside because we've agreed to it. Like, that's what I mean by performance. Yeah. But having this set up where it is not like, it's more authentic, like, you're there and like whatever can, just like at a coffee shop. Yep. Just like, maybe I'll keep to myself. Maybe I'll start a conversation to the person next to it. Like that feels very like easy to me. And that's where these neat things relationships and discoveries can unfold.
And the control system, this is how they do it for themselves. For us, they make us sign up to formal schools and educational programs and workshops and classes and things like this, right? Like they make it very like institutional and difficult. And the idea that we can like learn and get the most out of an experience by making it like fun and hanging out, that sounds like the fantasy solution that you were talking about, that is the only solution, right? Because if it's not fantasy, it's theirs. And when I say theirs, I mean the one that they've created for us. They do the fantasy shit for themselves, right? They do that, and then they say, oh, we've come up with the curriculum for what you need to do if you're going to know things about the world, and it's fucking terrifyingly boring. Right? But that's not how they do their learning. They do the fucking fantasy shit. They're like, all right, we're going to pay somebody $100,000 a year just to sit in the room with other smart people and let them do whatever they want. That sounds fun to me. That sounds like a good thing, right? Yeah. So I think it ticks all of those kinds of boxes. And so I like that. And I think this is, and I just think like, I think people want to be, especially with like a lot of the country, like in another round of quote unquote lockdown, people want to hang out with people that they find interesting, right? They don't want it to have to be formal every time. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I'm down. I wrote down on my notes, the Good Time Mind Control Club.
There you go. I like that. Yeah. I think the other thing this does is it really starts to set in place. Like, I think where all of this may be going at some point is the development of some kind of like community center or retreat center or something that exists in real life where people can kind of come and go from and have this experience where we get together, we learn things, we have a good time, we go off on our own individual adventures, we come back, you know what I mean? Like I've had this conversation with a number of people on my travels, like something, not necessarily like a wellness center or like but more like a private social club where there's all kinds of activities that go on there and people can kind of come and spend time there at certain times of the year. Then they can go, and there's others who are there kind of almost all the time, and, or whatever kind of, just kind of like a sort of an intentional community, but not one with a lot of like, force, rules, and structure. One that is more like, all right, we're going to be here doing interesting stuff and come and go as you please. And there could be experiences sort of attached to it. You know what I mean? That's right. I think where something like this is ultimately going, the way I see it, sort of long range. And so this is sort of starting, just like I started the online speakeasy with Conspiracy Cocktail that maybe will become a physical reality on the other side of this. Like this is kind of another version of that. And people love the Conspiracy Cocktail. I have people who've been to every single one of them. I've done like 22 or 3 of them. And there's people who've been to every single one, So.
All right. So, okay.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. I guess the next step for us, and maybe we could move on to some like the research, because there's some things I'm really excited to talk about. I'm certain you do too. Yes. But we just really need to come up with a little bit more infrastructure, right? Like how we could set this up. Yeah. and maybe you and I can talk about that offline. And then I want to start doing that. I want to start, like, when I do my normal, like, if I'm going to go and do like my normal research or my normal things, we'll come up with the hours and what have you. I'll be on, and I'll start talking about that more on like my videos. Like, I don't really talk, like, I feel weird like promoting stuff. Because I want to, I'm not, but this is something I'd want to invite people in, and like, this is how you become a member. This is the membership. This is the membership fee. And just like one flat fee. It's like a social club.
It's like when you join the golf club or the whatever it is. Absolutely. Country club or
It's the Good Time Mind Control Social Club. Like the Buena Vista Social Club. Was that a movie? All right, cool. All right,
awesome. Okay, so now it's been a couple weeks since we got together. I'm sure you have some stories for me, and I have a couple for you. There's two in particular that I'm thinking about, and so let's do a little story kind of stuff. And I think maybe if we're going to do a little like research on the recording today, the answer as to where we should go with that might come out of the story.
Yeah, I think so too. And it'll be just like, and it'll be kind of nice. It's like, I want to be able to have a place. I don't know how this would work. I don't know if this is even possible, but where we could, like, things that we were going to talk about, but we never got to, but we could at least have like a place where we talked to, where it's footnoted for like a future time.
So we should start keeping a list. Yeah.
But I'd like that to be like maybe open to other people as well. Like on like the coffee shop wall.
Like a database. That's a good idea. Like just a list on the wall of of pinned topics for future conversation and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that sounds friggin' awesome. So why don't you go first? Why don't you I'll give you, or can we take a minute break? I gotta pee.
Yep. Let's hit pause. We'll be right back.
All right.
Okay, we're back. All right. So where do you want to start with the story? You want me to start, or you want to start?
You start.
Okay. So we had a cross-country trip. We drove to Iowa to spend Thanksgiving with Laura's brother. That was fun, but it was kind of like, your usual get together with, family and friends for Thanksgiving. And really the more interesting things were the trip there and the trip back, right? The driving, the cross, it's been a long time since I had a really long road trip. We've done some short ones like within California or just to Arizona, but this was significant, right? So we started, and there was some cool stuff about it. Like from the very beginning, we made interesting stops and met up with interesting people along the way. But on the way there, we were mostly just trying to get there fast, right? So we weren't really taking our time, but we did notice an incredible number of these towns with similar names, like you and I have talked about when we deal with maps, right? Like even sometimes like two towns that seem to be only 30 or 40 miles apart from each other with the same name, right? Like maybe in very eastern Colorado and the western part of Nebraska, there'll be two towns with like the same name, right? And it's okay, there's a story that you can tell yourself, all right, maybe it's the same family that like had a farm here or whatever, and then the son or the whatever moved a little distance away into the other thing, or there was a breakup of the family or whatever. But the more esoteric and interesting idea to me is the idea that there's an energetic connection between the two, whether that just be energetic or whether it be that there's actually like a tunnel, some sort of time tunnel or portal or doorway between these places. I think it's interesting to consider for what that's meant in our history, but also for how we're going to deal with travel going forward, because like I actually feel like while I'm always, of course, like I'm of split mind a lot of times about all the things going on, right? Obviously, I'm not for censorship and I'm not for like restrictions on travel and whatever. But there's a part of me that is like, there's a system above the totalitarian psychopath government system, right? Like that's happening. And we're like, why is this being allowed to happen? For religious people, if God exists, for more like spiritual people, but not religious, like why is universe allowing this? Like maybe those grander things are challenging us to like rise up to a level of our own magic that we've been lulled into sleep about. Right. So if you can't get on an airplane anymore, I'm still going to travel. I don't know about you. I'll find a different way. Right. And, like this idea of like movement between levels of reality. Like if you want to go to a concert and they're saying you have to have a vaccine to get past the front door, well, maybe I can jump into a reality where that's not the case, jump the fence, get over, and then I'm in a concert. I like this idea of like really the response being, rather than like whining and complaining and protesting about this stuff, is being like, all right, well, like, there's a bigger reality that I do believe is at least benevolent and certainly isn't malevolent, right? That like is allowing for all these things to happen for some sort of reason of like our advancement. You know what I mean? In whatever way you take that to mean. And so I think like starting to look at some of these things, we also had some of these days where it was like all day long, we were like running into things. Like we had one day, like somehow beaver came up as a topic of conversation. And then that next day, like we saw so many like towns with the name Beaver in it, or like washes, you see the signs for like the wash or the creek or the whatever, like 10 or 12 of them, like an incredible amount. Like it's like and Laura hadn't noticed, she's driven that way before because she lived in that part of the world, Colorado, Nebraska, all that kind of stuff. It was like all this beaver stuff, right? So but the names, the repetitive town names was interesting to me. And then also, I've never been to the Midwest before. I've been to Colorado before, but I've never been to like Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, any of those places. So to me, I was fascinated with looking at just these enormous fields and farms and whatever. And some of them are really interesting looking, the way they're sort of built into the rolling hills. There's like almost like steps on them, the same way that there's like levels on a pyramid or whatever. And some of these things, you're looking at them and you're like, I know there is something inside the ground there, right? Like, right? So like, I know that there's there's something else going on there. And then just to watch the different behavior of like the animals on certain pieces of land than on other pieces of land. Like obviously some of them are factory farms and those animals are in little pens and that's no good. But there was like a variety of different ways that you would see free range cattle, right? Like that are roaming around, and some of them are on hills and some of them are on flat land, and the way some of them act and congregate, like, and then we also noticed like there's an unusual amount of like 5G towers in the middle of like cattle fields, right? And like we were trying to understand like how this is affecting the cow. Like, why would there be a 5G tower out here? There's actually nothing out here, right? Like it's bizarre, but it's like right in the middle of the cattle field. So we were observing some of that stuff, and I just, there seems to be a higher level of common sense in like Eastern Colorado and Western Nebraska in terms of like what's going on in the world right now, which was, interesting for me to observe. But yeah, so that was the kind of the way there. We were just trying to get there fast. So there wasn't so much like wandering about or taking our time. But on the way back, we decided to, well, let me tell you what happened. One very interesting thing happened in Iowa. Okay, so Laura's brother lives in a suburb of Des Moines, right? So first of all, Des Moines was kind of interesting. Check out that Capitol building in Des Moines. It's got like the full free energy setup of the 4 small domes and the big onion dome in the middle that like, like now is starting to really be like highly correlated with generation of free energy and stuff like that. It's got the full setup like that. But Des Moines was actually like a pretty modern kick-in city. I thought it was going to be something like trapped in the 90s, but it was pretty cosmopolitan. It looks like there's a lot of culture there. It seemed pretty interesting. There's some like ode to sort of Tartaria or, whatever there as well. But I had a really interesting thing happen. Okay. I should see if I can get the picture. We pulled up. So did I tell you about the whole weird thing with like the multiple iterations of Ingersoll that happened in one day? Did I tell you about this? Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's people who will listen to We're at Conspiracy Cocktail. I had one day where like 3 or 4 in totally unrelated ways, the term Ingersoll came up, right? And so it was like Ingersoll Lockwood, right? And then it was like Laura's brother and his wife had called us from a bar on Ingersoll, right? Like, and then we had been trying to find them a gift, and the store that we got it from was on Ingersoll. And then there was like one other thing about like, I think it was in the Dave McGowan book, like one of his people in the book lived in some Ingersoll apartment complex. It was like weird. I kept having Ingersoll. And at Conspiracy Cocktail one night, Jeff brought that up, and I wasn't expecting to talk about it, so I couldn't remember all the iterations. So I kind of had like a flub moment because I couldn't produce the interesting synchronicity, right? Because I wasn't thinking about it anymore. But when Laura was trying to remind me of it, she kept saying something about Ingersoll Rand. And I was like, Rand? No, Ian is Rand. And then she went looking it up, and there's like a company that makes compressors in Des Moines called Ingersoll Rand. I'd never heard of that. So that wasn't part of my synchronicity kind of thing, but she kept saying that, and she couldn't figure out if she was saying it because she knew about Ingersoll Rand, or if she had confused Ingersoll, Lockwood, and Ayn Rand and put the two of them together because we had been talking about Ayn Rand too. So that was there. But then we're in Des Moines. We're going to eat, right? We're in the car. We're going to eat at this pizza place. And we pull up to an intersection that is Ingersoll and 31st Street. I have a picture. I should go get the picture and put it up on the screen. It's on my phone. So you can see we're in the car and we pull up to the intersection and I see, oh my God, Ingersoll is here. It's the street, Ingersoll. And there's a building on the corner that in the window, there's a painted sign that says Lockwood. And Ingersoll Lockwood, of course, wrote The Last President and the Barron Trump time travel thing, right?
Right.
So that's crazy, right? Like, because, you know, like the street sign and then a business on the corner, right? It isn't like if there was one sign that said Ingersoll Lockwood, you'd think, okay, the person knows about, right, the book or something like that. Then when I send the picture to Jeff to be like, look at this, right? He doesn't see the Lockwood, but he finds the word Rand in the picture. And the word Rand is on Heidi, that's Laura's sister-in-law's radio, right? Which got into the frame of the picture. Like there's an option for like playing songs randomly, but it just says Rand. So I have this picture, Ingersoll on the street sign, Lockwood on the fucking building in the window, and Rand from the car's computer generated stereo system. So it's making me think that like, what if this is clue to some kind of coordinates, right? What if the book about, you know, like what if we're
right.
Right. And the coordinates aren't spatial necessarily, like there's some blend of spatial, temporal, dimensional kind of thing, because we have a building, a street sign, and something inside the car. We have something that is like civic, something that is like marketing wise or brand, and something that is computer generated as a process in a piece of technology, right? Like it's bizarre, but like there's some kind of like coordinate being generated. I'm gonna go grab, you're looking at something obviously, I'm gonna go grab my phone so I can send it to my email and show the picture.
Yeah, I want to see that.
I'll be right back. All right, let me find the picture and email it to myself so I can put it on the screen. All right, all photos, let's see. Here it is, okay. Send it to my email.
So I'm looking